The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
So not only is Donald Trump the reality show president, but it's sort of a reality show White House. And one piece of that was Omarosa Manigault Newman, who was a contestant on one of the seasons of Donald Trump's reality show Apprentice. I believe Trump fired her in it. She was not the winner, right?
She was on 3 seasons.
Oh, 3 times in a row.
Yeah, the first time she made herself known as one of the villains in the series.
Yeah, right.
And she came back on 2 more times in the Celebrity Apprentice. Yeah.
Oh, as a contestant or as a judge?
As a contestant.
As a contestant, okay. Anyway, she was working for the Trump administration, and she is going to be leaving her post at the Trump administration. There's a huge controversy, apparently, over whether she resigned or was fired. There was one statement that she resigned to pursue another opportunity, but at the same time, it was said that she was fired, and it appears as though it might have not been particularly friendly, including that she was escorted out by Secret Service or White House security or something like that.
Yeah, there are multiple reports here, but the most sensible thing that probably happened was that John Kelly fired her.
Right.
And then what she tried to do was to go to the residence within the White House, and obviously couldn't get in because now she's no longer an employee there, and the Secret Service had to escort her off White House grounds.
Apparently, there were a number of concerns about her beyond just that she was a contestant on a reality show, and beyond that doesn't really have any reason to be working at the White House, which is that she was working on a Black History Month event early in the administration. Black History, of course, being February. So this was like at the very beginning of Trump's presidency. And she wasn't able to get enough black people to go to the event, apparently. And to the extent that it's relevant, she also is black. But of course, black and white people both could fail or succeed at organizing a Black History Month event. And a whole number of other grievances, just that she's kind of a misfit in general.
It was one failure after the next.
Yeah.
And you obviously could have predicted this because she had no qualifications to work in the White House. She was on a TV show.
Yeah. Although, I think that I want to be clear. Some people will write in and say, David, you're being sexist because before being on that show, she did also have business success or something. Maybe that's true.
No.
I don't know. I mean, she was very young at that time, and I don't know whether that's true or not. But she's only working for Trump because she was a contestant on The Apprentice. Will you be sad to see her go? I was not even aware of anything that she actually did up until I learned of her firing.
She wasn't even on TV too much anymore. I mean, maybe at the beginning, maybe during the campaign.
She would sometimes appear sitting next to Trump when Trump is allowed to speak at a table, but she wasn't speaking, so she would sometimes be visually there.
Maybe she's the last of these crazy characters to go for a little while. Now we have like Sebastian Gorka gone.
He's gone.
Steve Bannon. I mean, the whole peanut gallery is on its way.
Spicer's gone. I'm hoping that something implodes with Sarah Huckabee Sanders, like that she attacks someone during a press briefing or something like that.
I could see that. Yeah.
I obviously wouldn't want them to get hurt, but just an attempted attack. And then she says that it's fake news and that she's already answered that question.
And before you go on from this, we actually have a video from the firing of Omarosa.
Do you really? What is it?
You know, I've always been a big Omarosa fan, but Omarosa, you're fired. This was not close.
Thank you for bringing me
Thank
back.
you very much.
Who's that country music looking at? Was that one of the Baldwin brothers right there?
Yes.
I think that was one. What is going on with that Apprentice show? I mean, it's been. I remember watching season one. Season one, yeah.
Did you like it?
I think you were 4 years old at the time.
No.
It was okay. It was okay.
I was like 11, and my impression from that show was that Donald Trump was this big, successful businessman, a billionaire, and I got the wrong impression.
Yes, that's for sure. Okay, let's talk about penguins. I know a lot of people who just love penguins, not any particular penguin, but just the penguins in general. And in New Zealand, there's been a revelation of a giant penguin that was largely the size of a person. The creature was about 20 pounds heavier than the average NHL hockey player, apparently, and weighed and measured 5 feet 10 inches tall when swimming. What a gigantic penguin. Can you imagine that? And I know we've heard a lot about large mammals that used to be on Earth, the megafauna, which have gone extinct, and there are a number of different hypotheses about how that happened, and humans are a big player in those hypotheses. But this is now a totally different thing, a gigantic penguin, which is also no longer around.
It is pretty cool, and I guess it was able to thrive after the dinosaurs went extinct because it had fewer predators and competitors out there.
Yeah.
But then once you had the emergence of seals and, animals of its own size, it started to dwindle and shrink in size.
Are you a fan of penguins? Like, are you one of the penguin aficionados?
They're cute. They're not my favorite animal, but
Yeah.
just the fact that they can't fly and they waddle around, and they're one of the very few animals hanging out in the Antarctic. I have an affinity for penguins.
They can't fly, but they can swim very quickly.
Yes.
That's for sure. I last saw penguins in person. I think that if you're against zoos, you have to be against the Montreal Biodome as well, although supposedly it's pitched as like this is an okay environment for them. They have penguins at the Montreal Biodome, and I last went there maybe like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, something like that. That's when I last saw penguins in person, but of course, beyond a very thick pane of glass.
Would you go to one of those zoos that's just entirely dedicated to conservation, perhaps like, rescuing endangered animals? I don't even know to the extent that these things exist, but
Like a nature preserve
yeah,
or
if
an
you have-
actual zoo?
I guess it would be a nature preserve, yeah.
I think I would be up for going to a nature preserve
Okay.
or going out on a safari in Africa where you're going into the territory of the animals and sort of staying at a distance and not disrupting them in any way. Although I know there will be people who hear me say that and they'll say, David, just driving a truck and the fossil fuel emissions are disturbing them.
True. To some extent, but
I
you
don't
want
know.
to see the animals. I mean, that's a cool thing.
Would you go on a
Understandable.
safari in Africa?
Probably not.
You wouldn't.
I would have to think it over, I think. I think that's my final answer on
What
this
would keep you from doing it?
the environmental impacts, whether you actually are disturbing the animal.
Yeah.
Safety, perhaps, because they can get violent out there.
Sure.
And, just like hunters, you're in the wild, right? They
Yes.
could attack you at any point, and really, you have no recourse.
This from the guy whose cat is killing 1,000 migratory birds a year or something like that. Okay, well, listen, I would consider. I think I would be okay going to a safari. But yeah, I saw a recent video of an elephant charging a safari vehicle. And
Elephants are very emotional.
yes, that's right.
One of my favorite animals, I'd say.
Once I saw an elephant after seeing a really, really touching episode of Will and Grace, and it was beside itself. It didn't eat for a week. It was crazy how impacted it was by that.
They cry.
Okay, Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer is now in touch with police about fake sexual assault allegations that were concocted against him. There was a document that was created which meant to be or was purported to be a document outlining sexual assault allegations against New York Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer. It turns out that those were bogus allegations, and that has now been turned over to the Capitol Police, who have been asked to investigate and pursue criminal charges. I actually think this is the right way to handle this, because in the same way that a false allegation of any crime, and false rape allegations are a popular one with some people on the alt-right, an individual claiming that they were the victims of rape when they weren't is criminal and liable to be criminally prosecuted. If you concoct a document saying that someone else has been accused of sexual assault or rape, even if you're not saying you were the victim,
Yeah.
that should be handled the same way. That should also be considered a crime, and it is, of course,
and-
if it's actually prosecuted.
And this one's an open and shut case, too, because the person that they're alleging was the victim of sexual harassment by Chuck Schumer came out and said that this isn't true.
Now, here's the thing I'm trying to figure out. I heard that Mike Cernovich, who targeted Sam Cedar and is now targeting me for a tweet about Alabama on Tuesday night, that he was somehow involved in this, although I'm not exactly sure of whether that's true or not.
In which case, criminal charges may be put against him in
Absolutely.
this case, right? And he
they
would
should
deserve
be
it.
if that's the case. I don't know if anybody. I'm going to Google that after the show and see what else I can find out about
And
it.
apparently, Cernovich was in part responsible for the takedown of John Conyers.
Oh,
Which,
right.
if so, okay. I mean, that was credible, right? So I guess that one's okay. But it seems like he's making a habit out of this.
Well, I
and,
saw
you know,
on Tuesday night someone tweeted. I don't know who it was. Not anybody I recognize. They tweeted, "Cernovich and I are going to end the career of a U.S. senator." And I don't actually know, because it was really crazy what was going on my Twitter account Tuesday night. I don't know if that was an old tweet or if that was something new, if it referred to Chuck Schumer and Cernovich's possible involvement. I'm really not sure at this point, but I should look into it.
That's interesting because Mike Cernovich is the protege of Roger Stone. And shortly before allegations were made and released against Al Franken, Roger Stone tweeted something to the same effect with regards to him. So they're working together, I would imagine.
In what sense is Cernovich a protege of Stone? He's in the same style, or
he's
they
like
actually?
His friend.
Oh, he is friends with him.
Worked for him. Well, I don't know if he worked for him, but he is under his
tutelage.
Wing. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, I had no idea about that. Although it explains a lot of things, considering who and what Roger Stone is. And speaking of which, have you seen the Netflix documentary Get Me Roger Stone?
No.
Oh, it's entertaining but weird.
Okay. Yeah. Roger Stone is an entertaining but weird guy.
Yeah.
In doing research for our interview with him, apparently he's this big-time swinger.
Oh, is that true?
Yeah.
Interesting. I'm not surprised. He's got one of the weirdest fake tans I've seen, and rightly or wrongly, I associate bad fake tans with swinging.
He also has a tattoo on his back of Richard Nixon.
Oh, that I knew. That comes up in the film.
Interesting.
That comes up in the film. Yeah, he just loved Nixon. Okay, real quick, I mentioned this on the regular show. In case you're not watching the regular show today or haven't yet, the fee increase on Patreon that led to almost 200 of our patrons canceling their pledges has been rescinded because of public outcry and outrage about that decision by Patreon. So if you're still a member, but you were also a patron and you canceled your Patreon contribution, please restart it because they have canceled it. You won. The activist patron community was heard, and Patreon said, we're not going to do it because the reaction was so disastrous. So I consider this a win for activism.
It's hard to get a person to own up to a mistake that they made. To get a business to do it is even harder, and it happened in this case.
Success, no doubt about it. But now we got to get those pledges back because a lot of people will never find out that Patreon canceled that. So let's do it. We'll be back on Monday, tomorrow.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.